Coming up next, we're going to talk about scaling AI responsibly, which means evolving every layer from foundational models to governance. And our next speaker will explore how AI stack must adapt for long-term impact. Please join me to welcome our next speaker, Keith Strier, the Senior Vice President, Global AI Markets from AMD, to share with us more. Over to you, Keith.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I hope everyone's okay. I've had plenty of coffee, feeling ready. I've got 15 minutes to cover a lot of content. So let's get into it. Let's see. How many times have you read posts on LinkedIn or come to a conference like this one and the speaker on the stage declares that AI is the defining technology of our time? Right? It's almost getting a little boring, a little redundant. We hear this a lot. Now, there's a debate raging on. The debate is whether we are truly on the cusp of superintelligence or artificial general intelligence. Personally, I don't think we should get too caught up in that debate. Let that debate happen on the side. People, they're not even sure, industry's not even sure how to measure intelligence. There's so many benchmarks, and I'm sure very few of us actually are able to understand the benchmarks. But the lifespan, the trophy lifespan of having the best AI in the world is like 3 weeks, right? Almost immediately, less than 1 month later, someone else takes the trophy. So let's not worry about that. The technology is progressing very fast. While people debate whether we are on the cusp of superintelligence, we'll let that debate go on. There's something they're not debating, which is the implication of this technology. Now, you're familiar with ChatGPT, right? We're going to come back to that. And GPT stands for Generative Pre-training Transformer. That's the general, that's the definition of a GPT in the AI context. But I'm going to refer to another kind of GPT, General Purpose Technology. It's a different one. You can look it up. What's interesting about that term is it really unlocks what you need to understand about why AI is so important, not just as a technology, but as an imperative for the world, for the Malaysian economy, for the ASEAN economies, for everybody, for parents with their children, for employers with their employees, for doctors with their patients. You have to understand what's happening at the big scale, big picture, and not be distracted by the noise around models and technologies. That's important, but this is even more important. Context. And the context is, since the dawn of time, since the domestication of plants, since the introduction of steam into engines or electricity into factories, there have only been 26 technologies that have fundamentally transformed the world. AI is 27. It is the most recent, most powerful general purpose technology, but it's different. It's different in two ways. Number one, the pace is so insane, it's hard to describe. Electricity took 40 to 50 years after it was invented to be mass distributed and to create large-scale impact by transforming the industrialization of a country. 40 to 50 years. We're measuring progress in weeks to months now, right? Who knows where we'll be 50 years from now, but the time scale of this impact is very, very different. Now, in the history of the modern era of AI, really only goes back to 2012. And I won't go into all the reasons why, but more or less, most agree in 2012 was kind of the turning point when the current deep learning architecture that's behind so much of the things that we care about, that we're excited about in AI today, really came together and converged. It wasn't invented in 2012, but the convergence of GPUs and deep learning architectures and huge amounts of data all came together to create this new era. There were previous eras, but the modern era is about 2012. But it took 10 more years till November of 2022 for us to have this moment, sometimes referred to as the iPhone moment of AI. There were actually two very significant events in the past 10 years that really have unlocked. Again, the technology is progressing on its own pace, but the implications of that technology for you as policymakers and prime ministers, for as employers or as parents, wherever you are in the spectrum, the implications of these technologies are roughly the same. And two events happened, one of them here in Asia and one in the US. In 2022, it was ChatGPT. When that was debuted, the commercial launch of that technology set in motion this conference and everything we're reading about. Without this event, we would not be here right now. I was right there in the front lines when this came out. I was actually in Europe just a week after this came out, and I was in a meeting with all the digital ministers of Europe, and this is all they wanted to talk about. This was clearly a transformational event. By the spring of 2023, it was quite clear that the world had changed and things were exploding. But in fact, what set in motion this event was something that happened 6 years earlier. 6 years earlier, Google came to South Korea and, using a system called AlphaGo, beat Lee Sedol, the highest-ranking master Go player in the world. Now, this was significant for two reasons. There's two narratives here. One, the technology narrative. The technology narrative was almost nobody believed a computer could beat a human at this game. This is not chess. This is the most culturally significant, most continuously played game in the history of the world. And it's a very complex, nuanced game that requires a level of creativity and cunning and planning that is not common for other games. And no one believed an AI could actually match or outwit a human at this game. So part of it was the technology part. The other part was the geopolitical part. Because it wasn't just technology that beat a human. It was a US technology that flew to South Korea and beat a South Korean master player. This event resonated across the region. This was not a quietly taken event. It may not have been big news in the New York Times in the US, but it was big news in this part of the world. And it set off alarms across many capitals and to many governments that maybe we need to take this technology much more seriously. And 1 year later, AI became a matter of sovereignty. Now, they weren't talking about it quite then. It took a few more years before that word showed up, but that's exactly what happened. Starting with Canada and China and then a few other countries, but in the summer of 2017, governments of the world started taking AI very seriously. In fact, it became a policy imperative. They articulated a vision, they focused on economic growth, they focused on skills, culture, all these things. Countries got organized. That started in 2017. Now, in the years since, every country on Earth, pretty much, we'll call it, out of the 190 countries, I'd say roughly half have now a national AI strategy. They're not all doing the same thing, but there's common themes. But something else has happened. Again, as a general purpose technology, AI has become so pervasive, so important, so impactful, that it has converged across every single domain of policy. There is no economic policy now without AI. You can't talk about the future of your economy without talking about AI. You can't talk about energy without talking. There is no AI without energy, and there is no energy without AI. There is no industry without AI. You can't talk about the future of industries while thinking about the impact of AI across all those industries. There is no security. The security of nations now depends on having access to large-scale computing and the algorithms to protect your critical infrastructure. The future of defense will be pervasively defined by AI and robotics. This is very, very clear. Science. All fields of science are now computationally intensive. It doesn't matter if you're in the mathematics department or the biology department or the anthropology department or the economics department. Your ability to advance that field is increasingly tied to your ability to access large-scale computers running advanced algorithms. This is true. And all the universities struggle with this. All universities are talent-rich but compute-poor. This is a huge problem. Education. There is no education in the future without deeply infusing AI in computing, personalizing curriculums, empowering teachers, unlocking human potential at a very young age. This is going to transform the educational field inside and out. And of course, every heavy industry, transportation, it just doesn't matter, right? So we are now at a point where the calculus of competition has been redefined by AI. Not just the ability to produce it, that's one part, but the other part is to adopt it, right? Adoption in your daily business, in your daily lives, will be just as important as the ability to create. In some cases, maybe even more important. Not every country will be a leader in every field of AI, but even small countries can punch above their weight. And we're seeing this. We're seeing this here in Southeast Asia. We're seeing countries that are not in the top 10 or top 20 of GDP, but they're leading in AI. They're finding their path, and I believe that will rewrite the balance of power in economic wealth distribution and opportunity in the future. Now, it's not just about competition. It's also about collaboration. It's an opportunity for countries to work together. That's why I'm here. That's why many are here. That's why this conference is so important. It's partly to focus on helping a country, Malaysia, strengthen its sovereignty, strengthen its economy, create more opportunity for its own population, and to capitalize on its own intelligence as a resource. But it's also an opportunity for the region. It's an opportunity for the region to work together. And I've seen many ministers just outside. I saw the 10 or 15 ministers from the different countries in the region, and that's exactly why AI is not just about building walls, it's about building bridges. So models and computing and energy and data centers and talent, these are things that can flow across borders. And so I believe that the future of cooperation and the success of economies, particularly smaller countries, will depend not only on having a good sense of how AI plays a role in your future, but also how you can collaborate across within your neighbors. And I believe the ASEAN region really stands out as a great example of that. So let's just go quickly behind the headlines before I run out of time. So there's the headlines. I want to give you 3 insights that doesn't come through on the headlines, because not everything in the paper is, well, it's not that it's not true, but it's not the whole truth, right? There's more going on than what you see. So here's one. Open wins. Open innovation, open ecosystems, open standards, open architectures. It's not just open models, open source. It's all of these versions of open across the whole strata. In fact, if we work together to capitalize on our collective intelligence and our ability to solve these problems, we will be able to deploy much more AI for much lower energy consumption. If we work together, we can accelerate the ability to drive AI for humanity's benefit. Whether we're dealing with major health crises or climate crises or other things in which we have a shared goal, open innovation is the way to go. And I believe that countries see that, get that, and I hope that Malaysia and the other countries participating in this event will continue to lean into that. AMD also believes greatly in supporting all of this open ecosystem approach. Now, this one's a little trickier. If you look at all the big publications and all the headlines, you will only see one theme, which is really big data centers. They're getting bigger and bigger. It used to be that 100 megawatts was big. Then 500 megawatts was big. Now we have 1 gigawatt campuses, 5 gigawatt campuses. And just to give you perspective, to make sure you understand what that means, 1 gigawatt equals 1 nuclear power plant. So we're planning campuses now that need 1, 2, 5 nuclear power plants just to power those computing clusters. This is an incredible scale. Now, this isn't a bad thing. This is part of the overall fabric needed to drive AI forward, but it's not the only thing needed. You need computing everywhere. You need different kinds of computing. You need computing in your laptops. You need computing at the edge. You need small and medium-sized computing clusters, not just large-scale clusters. So AI is infinite. Its potential is infinite. It's a spectrum of opportunity, and you need a full spectrum of AI infrastructure from the cloud to the edge. And this means different kinds of computing, CPUs and GPUs and FPGAs and so forth, and NPUs, many, many different. That's the only way that we will democratize and distribute AI at scale. And then finally, everything looks like it's getting bigger, right? The narrative is bigger models, 100 trillion parameter models, and that's true. There's a need for those. At the very frontier of AI, you need these big models, but that's not the whole narrative. The future of AI will also be small. Increasingly, we know, because we're very early, right? We're so early in this journey. And what we're learning now is, in addition to needing these massive models to really reach these new frontiers of AI capabilities, at the same time, you don't need a large model to solve every problem. And so the future might look like a relatively small number of really big models, and then millions, maybe even billions of small models domain-specific, that consume much, much less electricity. They're much cheaper to both create and maintain and deploy. They can be deployed to your watch, they can deploy to your phone, they can be deployed to your PC, but they can run, and they're very powerful, and they're very smart, but they may only solve one problem. They're not generally smart. They're super, super smart on doing that one thing really, really well. So this is the direction of the industry. There's more than one narrative. It's very, very complex, but that's where it's going. This is a complex field, but we recognize the implications are clear. AMD makes the fastest processors across the entire spectrum of AI. We are powering billions of devices worldwide, cars, gaming consoles, PCs, computers, all across the board. The market-leading CPUs, the market-leading GPUs, the market-leading FPGAs, absolutely across the board. The world's most powerful supercomputer, #1, powered by AMD, and most importantly, a community-driven open platform for compute acceleration that anyone can use and anyone can improve. And we're only going to go deeper into that. We're going to make this as open and as shareable and as cross-platform as we can. That's our commitment to the world. So we have been in Malaysia for a long time, 50 years, actually. And we've been shaping the future together. And we are excited to continue to shape that future together in this new era of AI. And I thank you for your time.